Good afternoon, and thank you, and wow, I am so privileged and so honored to be sharing this afternoon with all of you. So in life, there are moments when you stop and ask yourself, how did I get here? Like, why am I standing here? Well, this is definitely one of those moments for me. And I find myself going back to the beginning, back to my roots. I was born to incredible parents, amazing parents who served as doctors in the Indian Army. I was the firstborn, and as far back as I can remember, I made my parents very proud and happy 99% of the time. Okay, slight exaggerations of personal achievements are allowed from time to time, don't you think? My brother was born a few years later, and even then, nothing changed for me. We were both given equal opportunities, and I want to emphasize this. I want to really emphasize this for you because I don't think a lot of people might understand that being equal might seem very normal. But where I come from, India, and a lot of developing countries around the world, more often than not, this is an exception. It's actually a privilege. My first experience of the glaring disparity between boys and girls came at a very, very young age. I grew up in a middle-class family with extremely philanthropic parents who constantly reminded me and my brother how lucky we were and how giving back to those who were less fortunate was not a choice. It was a way of life. Simple. I was 7 or 8 years old when my parents started taking me on these visits in a traveling clinic to developing communities around and villages around the city that we lived in called Bareilly. We were packed into this ambulance, and my parents would provide free medical care to people who couldn't afford it. My job at the age of 8 was assistant pharmacist. So I would count all the medicines, put them in an envelope, and give it out to patients, and I really took my job very seriously, very seriously. But the more I went on these expeditions, the more I began to notice the simplest things that distinguished a boy from a girl, or a man from a woman. For example, girls were pulled out of school when they hit puberty because they were considered ready for marriage and babies. That's 12 and 13, while boys still enjoyed their childhood. Or basic human rights, such as healthcare, were denied just because they were women. Let's call this whole experience trigger number 1 for me. Fast forward a few years and many, many triggers in between. Like a producer-director, for example, early on in my career, I must have been about 18 or 19, telling me that if I didn't agree to the ridiculous terms or painfully low salary in his movie, that he would just replace me. Because girls are replaceable in the entertainment business. That was a memorable one. Made me decide to make myself irreplaceable. But I think what really moved the needle for me and ultimately led me to create the Priyanka Chopra Foundation for Health and Education was an encounter with my housekeeper's daughter. About 12 years ago, I came home from set early one day, and she was sitting in my library reading a book. And she must have been 8 or 9 years old, and I knew she loved reading. So I asked her, I was like, it's a weekday, why aren't you in school? And she said, oh, I don't go to school anymore. So I went and asked her mother, and I said, why isn't she in school? And her mom said that her family couldn't afford to send her and her brothers to school, so they chose the boys. The reason, she would eventually get married and it would be a waste of money. I was completely blown, and it shook me to my core. Eventually, I decided to cover the cost of her education so that she could continue to learn, because education is a basic human right. And a huge necessity, especially today. From that point on, I was determined to make a difference in as many children's lives as I could, in whatever big or small way that I could contribute. There's a really, really beautiful quote that I read recently, and I think it's absolutely appropriate to explain what I'm trying to say today. The hand that rocks the cradle, the procreator, the mother of tomorrow, a woman shapes the destiny of civilization. Such is the tragic irony of fate that a beautiful creation such as a girl child is today one of the gravest concerns facing humanity. Girls have the power to change the world. It is a fact, and yet today, girls are more likely than boys never to set foot in a classroom, despite of all the efforts and progress made over the last 2 decades. I'm just gonna give you a stat, more than 15 million girls of primary school age will never learn how to read or write, compared to 10 million boys. Primary school, it's the beginning of our future. Still so much work to do. And for me, that is the fuel to my fire. The reason I'm so committed to this cause, and that is where my passion stems from, because I know that a girl's education not just empowers families, but communities and economies. A result of her education, we all do better. It's just as simple as that. As entertainers and influencers sitting in this room, I feel that it's our social responsibility to be a voice for the voiceless, which is why I applaud each and every woman in this room for being such a badass. For using your platform and your voice to contribute to change, and for ensuring that there is not even one lost generation as long as we are alive.
There's only one you, okay? Because there's no one like you. I'm talking about the core of you, who you are inside, your values, your beliefs, your flaws. And once you understand who really that person is, achieve your dreams, be fearless. I know I wanted to become an aeronautical engineer. What am I today? I'm an actor, I'm a singer, I'm an author, I'm a producer, I'm an artist. How did I go from becoming an engineer to all of these things? I made choices. The choices that I wanted for myself. So that is my rule number 2. Let your dreams fly. Give them wings. Be who you want to be just by being fearless. Now, opportunities. Film offer. My first music single. The first film I actually produced. There was never a plan, ever. More like the universe sort of guiding me towards these opportunities. All I had to do was recognize them and make sure I worked so hard that I squeezed every drop out of these opportunities. This, ladies and gentlemen, is called drive. It's called ambition. Want to dream of everything and I'll have everything. So rule number 4, be greedy. Be greedy for your ambitions. Be hungry for it. So today, my path is just my own. It belongs to no one. My failures, my successes, all of it, mine. My journey, all of it is mine. So rule number 5, do not compromise. Do not settle on your dreams. Only way to push failure aside is to move ahead. Not ignore it, analyze it, and learn from it. Always remember, you will never truly enjoy success until you have tasted failure. And trust me when I tell you, it tastes like shit. Really does. So rule number 6, fail, fail, fail again, and then rise like a phoenix. I can say that my risks and the gamble was worth it. You know why? Because I backed up those risks with my 100%. So rule number 7, be bold and take these risks. Now, friends, family, the people you work with, the people around us are our greatest influencers in your journey to success. So you have to choose very wisely. Rule number 8, surround yourself with the right people who do not stab you in the back. Now, who's into social media? Who's on social media? Raise your hands. Yeah, we like it. I like it. We can raise our hands. Alright, it's almost everyone. Now keep your hands raised if you have ever been upset by like a bad comment that you may have read on a photograph or like on Facebook or when you've posted something. And sometimes, it's like, why do people have to be mean? Yeah, so there's a lot of you, right? Guys, please let me just tell you this. No matter what you do, someone will always be unhappy. Always. Especially in this age of social media, it's so easy for us to be confused between the voices that actually matter and the opinions of faceless people writing behind the anonymity of what the web offers. They don't matter. So rule number 9, you can never please everyone all the time. And the biggest favor that you will all do to yourselves will be to laugh at yourself, at situations. Find a moment to appreciate every single day this funny thing called life. And that's my most important rule number 10. Don't take yourself too seriously. We're not making rockets. Alright? Calm down, have fun, and just enjoy this beautiful journey that we've been put on. I do that. In the meanwhile, hi. मैं यही हूँ, मैं जा नहीं रही. 2 और rules बचे हैं. It's really not that hard, in my experience, to be kind, to be compassionate, to be human. You will never know someone else's full story, so don't be quick to judge. My mother, who's here tonight with the rest of my family, she taught me when I was very, very young that there is always someone who will be less fortunate than you. Always. So give back. Give back. And finally, the most important one, always remember where you came from. It's truly what defines you. So I'm a proud Indian, an army ki beti, daughter of 2 doctors with a middle-class upbringing and ginormous families, who I love on both sides. We've seen good times, we've seen bad times, we've seen hardships, we've seen pain, laughter, sadness. But that is what has made me who I am. And I wear that with pride every day and everywhere that I go. So last and definitely not the least, rule number 12, don't ever forget your roots and where you came from. I read this somewhere and it kind of stuck with me, and I hope it'll stick with you. Life's journey is not to arrive at your graveside safely in a well-preserved body, but rather to skid in sideways, completely worn out, and say, holy shit, that was a ride. That is how I want to go.
I want to have a legacy. I want to be known as someone who has goals and achieves them, and whatever they might be, wherever they might be. I want to be limitless. I want to break stereotypes. I want to go where no man or woman has gone before. And it might be a scary path, and it might be a path that no one's taken, but at least it'll be just mine. I had the worst self-esteem when I was a kid. I was made fun of because of the way I talked, because of where I came from. I was made fun of on every level. And the only way you can change that is setting goals for yourself and saying, I will be the best version of me.
The most beautiful thing about having dreams is that it's in your hands how big your dreams become. And this film taught me that. I've come here only to introduce you to the idea of saying that no one can tell you that your dream is too small, or your dream cannot come true, or your dream cannot be allowed because you're a girl, because you're a boy, because you look a certain way, or because you come from a certain place. Don't be afraid to dream, guys, because they do come true. They really do.